Welcome back to On the Way Home, the podcast where we explore the people, perspectives, and systems shaping housing and homelessness responses across Canada. I'm your new host, Debbie Shadia, the CEO of Blue Door, and I'm thrilled to be joining you for this next chapter of the podcast. Today, I'm excited and have the honor to welcome Emmy Kelly, the former host of On the Way Home, and Blue Door's former Chief Operating Officer, who recently concluded an incredible 10-year journey with this organization. In this episode, we're going to reflect on Emmy's experience leading the podcast, her decade at Blue Door, and the insights, lessons, and memories that she has and will be taking with her into the next chapter. I've had the privilege of working alongside Emmy for the past 7 months, and I'm excited to learn about her journey, to celebrate her significant impact, and share her perspective with all of you. I hope you enjoy the conversation, and Emmy, let's jump right in. Welcome, Emmy.
Thanks, Debbie. You're off to an amazing start. I love your radio voice. It's awesome.
Oh, if I need another career after this one, I'll know what to do. Thanks, Emmy. So having you on the show today as you've transitioned to your new role is, as you can imagine, for all of us at Blue Door, very bittersweet. Everyone at Blue Door is thrilled for you for your next chapter. We're wishing you all the best. But of course, we're very sad to see you move on from our organization where you've had such a significant impact. But of course, it's on the way home. So I need to, and I get the opportunity to start with our signature question that you have asked many guests. I'm sure it won't surprise you. So I'm going to start with our question and reverse the roles for you. Emmy, what does home mean to you?
Well, to steal Leilani Farah's word, everything.
Yeah.
But I'll go a little further for me, to my personal story. There's moments when I'll wake up in the morning and hang my robe and think what a privilege it is to be able to come back to get this robe later today. In the winter, that it will be there. In the summer, when I don't want to wear it, I can leave it there and come back in the winter. Because the way I grew up, my parents actually chose to move to India. And so I grew up in India. But while there, there were a number of challenges, including family breakdown, and there was a number of moves. We never had like a consistent home. And so, fast forward to today where, I've had the privilege of starting my own family. Creating a sense of family and belonging has been so, so important to me.
Yeah.
And so, it's, the instance I gave of the robe is like a moment where I stay grounded in the importance of housing and what that actually means to people. It's, the place where people can rebuild, reconnect, where you have the opportunity to dream, where you're seen by your family. And this is really why the work of Blue Door has always mattered so much to me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Emmy. I don't know if the guests know that you have not only started a family, you have a family of 5 very lovely and successful children, and something to be proud of. And I guess the robe is almost that grounding, right? Is that sort of how you're describing it?
Yeah, it's a place to feel grounded. I think that's what home is, and it shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a foundation and a basis where everyone can kind of launch into life every day. And so I reflect on that often in terms of the people we serve and the importance of housing. As a nation, we already recognize that as a human right, but we're still far from realizing that basic human right.
Yeah, I agree with you, Annie. Thank you. So before we talk about the past 10 years, let's go back to the beginning. You've sort of talked about it a little bit in terms of what brought you to this work, but what first brought you to Blue Door, and what's kept you passionate about the work over the past decade? Like, why work in the field of housing and homelessness?
You know, the day I interviewed at Blue Door, truthfully, I was actually not looking at the time. I was still in international work, and I was reached out to online by recruiters. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to follow this journey because I'm, very committed to organizations. I'd like to see the work grow and stabilize and be structured. And the day I first interviewed with the Blue Door team, I remember they were incredibly apologetic for being late. They were navigating the lives of a couple that had been lost to homelessness. And what I saw from the team in that moment was people who cared very, very deeply about the work. It wasn't just an operation, that had to keep running. They were incredibly invested in, the work that they were doing, the people whose lives were lost, how they would honor those lives, how they would bring, how they would recognize them for others who were facing the same circumstances, how our staff were supported, how our funders were made aware. And I realized in that interview and from all the questions that followed and that I had that we were, obviously we were serving the very most vulnerable in our society, and that it was going to be a very taxing and very difficult role, but I'd be working with people who care deeply, with partners from regional government. At that time, we were only in York Region, and we had some, we continue to have incredible partners at the region of York. And so not only did I see amazing people, but also the opportunity to create change and to create more possibilities for the people that we served. And to the second part of your question, what kept me passionate? I would say first, the people. So, the participants who I've had the opportunity to see and interact with, our staff, who do incredible, not just life-saving work, but now like preventative and interventive work. Our partners who have, been with us day after day, and donors who have believed in us and trusted in us to deliver on dreams that we had or innovations that we wanted to pursue. And so for me, seeing that when the right supports are in place, lives can truly change. So about the people, I want to focus on our team for a minute, who have done really great work to care and focused on individualized care. No matter how much Blue Door has expanded over the last few years, Blue Door gets a huge hats off to our team who focus on the individual. In our emergency housing, they create individualized housing plans. In Construct, our trades-based employment social enterprise, they work on one-on-one plans with you to achieve your dreams. And so I'm really fortunate during my time at Blue Door to have worked with some really strong leaders. I'll shout out Michael Braithwaite, who had so many ideas and was constantly connecting people to and making everyone feel important, because they are. They're so important to the work. And then Alex Chang, who I've also been at Blue Door with for the full 10 years I've been here. He started even before me. He is one of the most thoughtful, rational guys you will ever meet. There's been so many times where like my own passion and inspiration is running a mile a minute, and Alex will help rationalize everything. And then there's Amanda Palermo and her team. I say she's the queen of HR. We have a union on our housing programs, and she has done just amazing work of recognizing not just the staff as in a body that works for Blue Door, but the unique needs of individuals in our programs and who serve in our organization. She's really done a lot with her team in terms of staff well-being, organizational excellence and staffing. And when we've had like these huge bursts of growth, ramping up the staffing complement, She's incredibly consistent, focuses on justice, equity, and diversity. And then there's Rachel, who I've had the opportunity to work with for 6 years. She joined when Blue Door had no resource development functions. We were essentially a service delivery for the regional municipality of York with 3 emergency housing programs. And we wanted to do more. We wanted to do better. We wanted to move from life-saving work to actually preventing and ending homelessness. So to do that, we needed to pilot and prove. We needed to raise the dollars to create the impact we wanted to have. And so Rachel joined us. And since that time, she has built and led a team and increased support for that impact. She, through her team, communicates so effectively with the community, with our donors. So incredibly grateful for her leadership. And then there's Emma Wood, who, was already a leader in her own right. And before joining Blue Door, she had launched the Good Food Impact in Stouffville for people in her community that were hurting and homeless. And we learned about Emma's work and had been collaborating with her for a while. And then she eventually joined Blue Door, first in resource development and now in construct as our leader there. She has brought so much stability and reliability to a very young program. 5 years ago, construct was a plan and a dream. And today we're now seeing that replication across Canada, and that scaling that we wanted to achieve has become a reality. Finally, I have to call out Hedel, who's our director of finance. That woman has steered this ship consistently. I always say, when we're not hearing about the problems, that's the time to be really happy, because she consistently has an eye to detail to keep Blue Door financials and everything on track. And then I have to say, the donors and partners who have believed in us along the way. A huge shout out to the Home Depot Canada Foundation. Like, when we were first launching Construct, so I did it for my final dissertation project, the business planning, and we had talked to different social enterprises and learned from them about the work they were doing so that we could kind of learn from successes and failures and start ahead of the game. So we had a great network of social enterprises that were already active in Canada, and we pitched to the Home Depot Canada Foundation, and they came on board and launched TradeWorks, which is an investment in social enterprise across Canada, as a solution to youth homelessness. And then, we also had the privilege of working with Lou Odette, who, before we had any other types of housing other than emergency housing, 10 minutes before our meeting, I'm not going to lie, 10 minutes before, we put together a proposal for him when he was coming to our site. And we essentially proposed some of the transitional and supported housing options that we wanted to add to our housing continuum for both men and families. And he believed in us. He approved actually both A and B parts of the plan in that first meeting. And that was actually how we started the launch of continuing housing away from emergency housing, but onto supported transitional. And then there's, the Pathy Family Foundation, who I had the opportunity to meet Michelle Ledon one day, and, they were launching their work. And, again, her belief in Construct and what we wanted to create through the social enterprise and replicate it across Canada. And they supported, the development of our platform and our multilingual pieces in the platform. I could go on and on, and I'd be remiss if I didn't call out the regional municipality of York, who I've, had the opportunity to work with over 10 years, the incredible staff there. There's been so many of them that at different points in time, there's highs and lows, and sometimes you're just out there in the trenches together. But really always what it is in this space, I think, is the collaboration on the best form of service delivery. I've also been lucky the last few years to have worked with the region of Durham as well. And And then as we launched Construct, to work with all three levels of government to deliver on, a workforce development solution. And then the other reason that's kept me passionate is the learning. I've had the opportunity to visit places in the world and across Canada to better understand their systems for housing and the fight against homelessness, how, countries and leaders are addressing challenges. And that has been hugely helpful to me. And while at Blue Door, I also took on studying for my MBA, and, having the opportunity to apply my learnings and my final dissertation to launch Construct was an incredible moment of pride as well for me. And I'm grateful to all the leaders I've spoken to and learned from on this journey, whether it's through Blue Door's work or on boards I've sat on or in partnerships that we enjoy at Blue Door. And so in that way, I've really had the good fortune also of being sponsored and mentored by some of the best in the field. Rebecca Shields, who's now at the Kids Help Phone, but used to be at CMHA, Tom Hunter in, seniors community housing, Stefan at Ottawa Community Housing, and Elaine. And through this podcast, meeting so many incredible leaders, I'm super grateful. And the one more thing about being passionate is the trenches. Like, I love being in the trenches and working with challenges, solving and, finding the solutions. I think in our work, there's moments of acknowledgement and recognition of the work we do, which always feels amazing. But then there's a number of moments when we're fighting as a team to do better, when we've lost a life, or in COVID-19, when truthfully no one in the sector knew what to do when we were told to stay home, stay safe. But essentially we were serving people who did not have a home. So how were they supposed to stay home and stay safe? And there were certainly cases of COVID-19. So Blue Door was the first one to say, we will open the first self-isolation site. And yeah, crazy as it was, we had to provide alternate service to families staying inside our emergency housing, and then open a COVID-19 site. It was exciting that I took the first shift because we had made a promise to the region that we would open on the weekend. So Michael and I took that shift, and we got taken for a ride and excused by our staff.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a real thank you for your service moment. But I would say that, those are like the moments where you bond as a team, shutting down our offices, taping up all the filing drawers and all, because we had no idea what the pandemic was going to be, and then turning that into housing for families when we started meeting families who had never even kind of heard or experienced what homelessness might be like. We knew we needed to create more spaces. And then also I'm a competitive person by nature. So
really?
Competing, like when the North American TD executives got together and competing for $1 million and winning that, or pitching to a room full of funders for our first affordable housing development and winning that. I think my work is always driven by the belief that we can do better, and we should celebrate the wins, but we can and should do better. We're a first world nation. We're a very wealthy nation, and yet we are still struggling to take care of our very most basic problems with poverty and homelessness in our nation. So yeah. I think that's sort of sums it up. I just love the challenge, when we decided to launch Construct, where were we going to get the dollars from? Writing those off the side of our desk, pitching to win those dollars from United Way for our social enterprise before we launched. And then working with our volunteer board of directors, demolishing the home before we had certainty around all the funding that would come in for our new affordable housing development. So I think it really takes it back, Debbie, to the people that are part of the change and part of the journey. And I'm just so grateful for that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've talked about some of the people at Blue Door, and you've also talked about your mentors over time. And I've spoken to all of the people on your team, and one of the things they've talked about is what an incredible mentor you've been to them, and what your time at Blue Door has meant to them. Everybody had a special memory. I think what you've described about your passion for the work and your drive to get things done because of your belief in how important it is and the difference that it will make certainly shines through for me in my brief time here. I've seen your accomplishments. I'm benefiting from your accomplishments. So everything you've said certainly has impacted, and all the individuals I've had the privilege of meeting, those partners, and the respect for Blue Door is, beyond, I'm going to get the expression wrong. Anyway, it's high. And so you're a big part of that. I'm going to move us on to the next question. So when you look back on your time at Blue Door, is there a person, a moment, or a story that has stayed with you or continues to remind you of why the work matters? And maybe that's, it could be a professional, it could be a service user. Maybe talk to us about that, Emmy.
I'll start with a moment. I think the moment that stays with me to this day is when I had the opportunity to go to Finland, and thinking about our operation, I said to our tour guide, who's, a pro in the housing and homelessness space there, I said to him, can you share with me a little bit more about emergency housing for families? Because I thought, here's some lessons I could take back. He looked at me in total shock and dismay. He was like, no, in Finland, children will never see the door of a shelter. This is a shame. He treated it like a shame that I would even ask where families would stay in emergency housing. He said, if a family ever does not have a home, they do not go to emergency shelter. We find them a home the same day. And so that has stuck with me, and it motivates me for us to continue to work hard to do better. I think we can do better as a nation. It's a motivator for me. So that's my moment. Mm-hmm. And that's my plug for all of us listening to not give up, to keep doing better, to build systems that do not allow our children and families to have to stay in emergency shelter, but that they can have home. And then this might be a story that that others have heard from me before, but I'm going to talk about Matt because it's the story that sticks with me from launching Construct. It's just, Matt was turned away from the justice system with no opportunities. He came to Construct. He worked hard. He achieved by his own interests. He went back to school, achieved his degree in business, and he's working downtown in construction and manages a team. And that to me is a story that I hold on to. It's not about numbers alone. We want to have the high success rates and the high number of participants. Why? Because it's stories like these where people get to be the heroes of their own journey and achieve the dreams that they've wanted to have. It's about real people, real futures. And to me, these are the most powerful moments when we see someone move from crisis to stability and confidence, employment, housing, and hope. Happy to say that Matt is stably housed and comes back to mentor our participants in the Construct program. And so I'm just so grateful for that story and many, many others that have risen through the work of Blue Door.
One of my first experiences, not that this is about me, but one of my first experiences at Blue Door was a Construct graduation, within my first week, right? And I had heard about the program, but until you kind of experience that, and I guess it's the multiple mats that until you experience it and see like how life changing that program is for people, the inspiration it gives. There's some people who don't end up in construction, but it's still changed their lives in that it gave them inspiration and hope. And I know that's a program that you've worked deeply on in terms of the vision. You talked about it being your business plan for your MBA, and what a legacy to leave from that perspective. And I think that's a lot of the moments, just some of the things I've seen in that program, moments about why we do the work we do, right? Yeah. The Finland one too, I think, is an interesting example because it's that we can end homelessness. This is possible. Like somebody looking at you like, what could you be talking about? And I think that's what we all need to keep as our Northern Star, or I get my expressions wrong, the North Star as, that it is possible. And I've seen that driving you through your time here. It's like, this is possible. Let's push further. Let's do more because, it's required, and we have people who are homeless and we shouldn't, right?
For sure.
So during your time at Blue Door, you've helped lead a tremendous growth and innovation, from building the housing continuum to expanding housing and health supports to launching employment programs like Construct. Looking back on those accomplishments, what are you most proud of? It's probably hard to pick one thing, but try.
I'm going to say Construct. It's a major point of pride for me. I think we looked at 3 intersecting challenges we face in Canada with so much homelessness that's rising, a lack of homes, and then a lack of laborers to build the homes. And then it almost seemed, as we started the work and the planning, it seemed like such a logical and simple solution that if we could support those who are homeless and detached from the labor market to reattach in some way and into the trades, we would start turning that cycle. So how could we do it? How could we provide those wraparound supports? And how could we connect? And sometimes, I think that it's also the realization of failure that's okay to admit. And in that moment, it was admission that as a charity, we had been doing it wrong. By connecting people in our emergency housing to minimum wage job opportunities, they still were not in a position to have stable housing. We needed to find opportunities that were paying a wage that they could actually rent a safe, dignified space to call home. And so, even though it is an employment program, we've always intentionally kept the focus on housing. It really is part of Blue Door's complement because the approach that we're taking is strengthening the pathway to housing stability. And so that's why too, the trades pay a decent wage when you're able to transition into those. And so that's why we intentionally put our efforts and focus there and ensure that the employment opportunities we're starting to connect people to are at a higher wage than minimum wage so that those cycles can begin to be broken. I'm also proud that I've been able to help Blue Door grow its impact both, nationally and locally, building the housing continuum that you mentioned, expanding the health supports. A lot of credit goes to Alex for the health hub piece. But we've been able to reduce our reliance on emergency services by 75% in our emergency housing programs because of that specific ad on site. I think for me, connecting the dots in our work is so important. So I'm really proud that I got to serve at a time when I could help to connect the dots across the organization and in the space. I think, my background's in business, and sometimes business gets a bad rap in the charitable space, but I do still firmly believe that applying that business sense allows us to grow, and that revenue or the growth is not about growth for growth or revenue. It is really about the opportunity to reach more people with better and longer term solutions and stronger impact. So yeah, those are the pieces I'm proud of.
Yeah, it's yeah, there's lots to be proud of there. I think certainly the Construct program, as you said. Let me just ask one thing about Construct, because to me, what's so unique about it is the wraparound supports. Like most employment programs don't necessarily have counseling or transportation or any of those kinds of things. So when you were constructing Construct, why was that important?
So it really was because we were first looking at the populations that we serve at Blue Door. So through the research that I did, like when we're looking at populations that are detached from labor market, there is a reason. There could be mental health at play. There could be crisis at home. There could be personal crisis. There could be other health or childcare or transportation or financial challenges. The list went on and on. And as we interviewed people, we had such an extensive list of what might be detaching you from labor market that when we first worked with ESDC at the federal government through the Youth Employment Skills Strategy to put in a proposal. And I really thought, yeah, through all the conversations we've had, we have this list made. Like we have really thought about most things. And yet it's so humbling because 5 years later, I mean, just 2 weeks ago, we had an incident that we've never experienced in our program that we had to navigate on the fly. And so we are consistently humbled that we learn from the people we serve. We learn more about the barriers they face to engaging. It's sad that, there are often stereotypes around homelessness or how we treat people experiencing homelessness. Everybody has a story, and sometimes there's very light touches that are needed to connect someone to an opportunity. We have those instances where, maybe someone's just lacking a connection or a network to get there, and we can be that point in time to do that. Maybe somebody's never had a mentor, never had expectations, and we're here to provide that structure and expectation. But then sometimes it's way worse, right? Like we've had, participants facing the most extreme crises at home with their family, with their parents, with their own mental health. And so that has really been the opportunity to continue to build out the supports that are needed so that you can essentially navigate those and connect meaningfully to a career in the trades that will be sustainable over the long term. And that's some of the work too our team has done, and continues to build around how can we continue to support. We do find that generally within 6 months after leaving Construct, people are pretty independent around their employment. We do provide supports for up to a year. There's less traction or need for that length of time. But certainly to your point, that's, that has to be the basis for this work, because we have to, sometimes I've been pushed about like, can we increase the numbers? Can we decrease the cost? And the answer is, when we start thinking about who we're serving, we can't dismiss what they're going through. It's not as though, your average person looking for a job and struggling to find a job. The people who have been detached and who are accessing our services, or now, of course, we have a much broader net where we work with York Region through OW, ODSP. We work with all the service providers across York, Durham, and Peel. We have to ensure that that there's a net that actually supports people in ways that are meaningful to them to re-engage and to create communities that can, be strengthened and thrive.
Yeah, and I think people have, as you say, opinions about people who experience homelessness and there can be judgment. And when you listen to the stories, like for me, I've been doing this work for a long time, and I've always been like, I don't even think I could stand up, much less, try and get a job, take care of my child, all those kinds of things. The stories are heart-wrenching. People have undue hardship, some individuals, and you think like just the fact that they can come and show up to a program. So it's one of the things I love about Construct is the wraparound supports, because it acknowledges that we all need those supports wrapped around us in order to be successful. And it demonstrates the success of the program, demonstrates that it works. When you put those wraparound supports, people can achieve because they are, cared for in the way that we all need to be. But for them, maybe it's a step up even more than what you and I need because we have the privilege of a home and all those kinds of things, right? So over the past decade, Emmy, you've helped lead. That's the question I just asked. So let's move on to the next question, Emmy, where you have also stepped into the role of On the Way Home host. What's it like to move from organizational leadership into holding space for these conversations and stories? As somebody coming into this role, what's that experience been like for you?
I think at first hosting the On the Way Home was humbling because firstly, I'd never hosted a podcast show before. And number two, I had really big shoes to fill. This podcast was actually Michael's vision, and he has a big personality. He's casual, funny. For those who are friends with him know he's even pursuing comedy right now.
So, I didn't know that.
So I think, once I got past all that, I thought for me, it was almost like launching a search for answers for me as a leader on how we could solve the housing crisis. Like I thought, like when I get to talk to, when I get to research and reach out to and talk to leaders on this podcast, I will in turn be learning about how we as an organization can continue to solve for the crisis that we're in as a nation. And then also, like, it was, for me, I've learned to lean on my own leadership. And over time, I think the podcast has become more nerdy. And I'd like to approach it as though all of us are learning from the start, which I think makes it a great podcast for anyone joining the sector or those who have been in housing since time, because there's always, new ideas and new thoughts. And I'm really grateful for how now we have 11,000 subscribers that, find the podcast interesting and the content helpful. And what I really enjoy about it is, when you do this kind of work, you can really put your head down and get really entrenched in everything that needs to be done. With the podcast, I feel it's given me a great opportunity to take pauses from leading the work and to reach out to other leaders and to listen more deeply and glean learnings and ideas from others who are leading and living and researching and challenging the work that we do. So it's given me a broader view of the sector and also reinforced how many brilliant people we have that are working towards housing solutions.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited now. Now I know. I think I'm going to be somewhere in between you and Michael, like a little less on the funny side and maybe a little less nerdy. So I'll be somewhere right in between. But I have appreciated for me, I've been in the housing sector for a while, but not as in depth as you or Michael had. And it has been a learning, right? You do learn, and it's a very niche podcast and area. And those who are working in housing, I think, can, like you've been inspired, I think the listeners get inspired by that, right? So I'm looking forward to that. So were there any podcast guests, Emmy, that or conversations or moments that shifted your thinking or stayed with you in a meaningful way?
Oh, so many. I think, though, Debbie, I'll say the most meaningful conversations to me were the ones that challenged my own assumptions
Okay.
or kind of illuminated ideas on how we might lead better in the space. Um, Near the beginning of hosting the podcast, I had Neil Hetherington on. He's a smart guy, and I thought, I'm going to pin this guy down on what policy he believes we need to change as a nation to sort this out. Um, and the reality is, if there was a silver bullet, we probably would have used it already. And so just the idea of it's taken us a while to get here. It's going to take us a while to build out of it. And so applying that patience and that collaboration to build solutions. Guests like Dr. Andrew Bazari, who helped us think differently about cost versus investment, community-based solutions, lived expertise also from people like Jason Miles or Vicky Senyasi, a construct participant. Those moments definitely stay with me. I'm a solution finder by nature, and the work that we do in housing and homelessness will always be messy. So, there's not always a clear path to a solution. So having conversations with people, I reflect on one recently with Tom Hunter, where he was reflecting on the challenges of safety in their seniors units. And there isn't, in so much of our work, there isn't a right way to do things or a silver bullet that's going to, bring us to the solution. So for me, it's that recognition that leaders are not challenged to be perfect. They're challenged to do their very best. And then, of course, there's other nerds like John Fox, always staying up with policy. And then Nick Gafusha, who, got to pick his brain of how he looks at housing as infrastructure for Canada, which is, a really neat and important concept. And then Elaine at Ottawa Community Housing, bringing in AI for better service delivery, and Dr. Prentice Danzler fighting against discrimination and housing inequity. I mean, the list goes on. I've been really excited and honored to speak to a number of new leaders coming into the space. And then we also have retiring and very wise leaders who remain committed to mentoring and supporting. And so there's so many layers, like I said, of building to create the change that we want to see. So it's always heartening to feel like that there's such a community behind this work, and leaders who are willing to share and collaborate so that we can, achieve better things together.
It sounds like, well, you talked about what the leaders have given you. It sounds like they've given you inspiration.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like inspiration to keep doing the work, to do better, to, I think we all learn from each other, and we do kind of feed off each other, right? In that way to keep us going and go, oh, okay, this is possible. It's like what you talked about, the Finland. Oh, what do you mean? So as you've embarked on this next chapter, Emmy, what lessons from staff, service users, partners, donors, or community have you carried with you?
I think from our staff, I have carried the learnings of the power of compassion, resilience, creativity, and showing up every day, even when the work is hard. From participants, I have learned to never make assumptions about people, to recognize that everyone has strengths, everyone has dreams, and everyone has a story behind their current circumstance. And from partners and donors, I have learned that big change only happens when people choose to believe that something better is possible. And they have come on board to invest in it together, to collaborate, to believe in building a dream together.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. As we wrap up, Emmy, what are you most hopeful for when you think about Blue Door's future? And what's one piece of advice or insight you would leave with the listeners?
Advice. Well, I'll start with hopeful. I'm hopeful that as a sector, we will continue to grow bold and practical solutions that move people from crisis to stability and opportunity. I see and I feel the passion of everyone in the sector, and I know that we will continue to push beyond managing homelessness towards actually ending it. That is my hope for Canada. Advice, no matter who you are, don't underestimate your role in helping to make change. Whether you're a donor, whether you're a staff member, a partner, an employer, a neighbor, a listener, you can all be part of creating a home for someone. Even a very small investment of time or resources can have a very large impact. I've seen that time and time again in my work here over the last 10 years. People who step forward with a belief and a small investment, whether it's time or resources, and how our team has been able to leverage that for solutions. And then stay close to the why. The work is hard, but the people we serve make it worth it. So that would be what I'm hopeful for and the advice I'd leave listeners with. And Debbie, I want to thank you for joining the show today and for carrying it forward from here. I feel like Blue Door, its staff, and its partners are incredibly special. And the On the Way Home has been an amazing platform to learn, to share, and I'm excited for you and to see where you'll take all the organization and all the awesomeness next.
Thank you, Emmy. On behalf of Blue Door, on behalf of all of our service users, because you've impacted, I think, to you, the why. You talked about the why, and that shows, I think, through your what you've contributed to Blue Door and to the communities, both in York, Durham, Peel, across Canada through this podcast, right? So thank you for your leadership, for your voice, and your commitment over the past 10 years. Can you believe it's been 10 years? It's wild, right?
Almost there, yeah.
Yeah, it goes quickly. Anyway, you've helped shape so much of Blue Door's growth and impact, and it's been a privilege to reflect on that journey with you today. So thank you so much for that. And I have big shoes to fill in terms of this podcast, but I will do my best to try and fill them and to bring the stories, the amazing stories, and the amazing journeys of both our service users and those doing great work in the field to continue that legacy. So thank you. So today we were able to discuss Emmy Kelly's leadership, her journey at Blue Door. Thank you to you for listening to On the Way Home. For our listeners, stay with us as we bring more conversations and deepen our understanding of home, community, and belonging. Thank you for joining. That's a wrap.